Well, guess what? There is a part two. Once I finished the previous reading, and closed it down, my guides came to me and said, somebody's going to ask you about the reference to Pope Francis and what does that mean. And let me show you the card. It was the Six of Spheres, this card. And remember, I said to you that the card spoke to me about three things. It was a timing reference referring to Pope Francis, the Jesuit, right? And so that speaks to me about the time frame of now and how I came to that following the line of Saint Francis of Assisi, the Jesuit, to Pope Francis, the Jesuit's Jesuit. Okay, that is supposed to be Saint Francis. But there's also, and then I said to you, well, it speaks too about the idea of perhaps Trump's involvement in helping McCarthy, the older man, dispensing out information, giving out scrolls, or passing down, quote unquote, the word, okay? But also it has another significant meaning, but it's not in this particular card. It actually comes from the very first card that we put down, the completed world. And let me show you what I mean. The actual image, where is it? Looks like this. Okay, it is the chalice, and then you'll see that there's a serpent spitting out something. So if we think about what I told you, my interpretation or my intuition is telling me about this card, it says this: the divine wine of every day is lost. The ritual significance of Holy Communion is lost, and the church withdraws its support from a strong-armed government. Discord erupts among the clergy when the Pope, who uses an aeroplane, can no longer travel due to contrary winds. Okay? Pope John Paul did a lot of traveling. Pope Benedict, who just passed away, and he is referred to here as well in relation to this card. So this again, for me, says that it's the time of now. It says the Franciscan priest will leave the church. Demagogic oratory takes over television. Humankind will free itself from religious, but not from political fanaticism. Faith will offer the cures, and evil will be forgiven. So this whole idea of what happened with January 6th, people were just acting like it didn't happen. We're just going to forgive everybody who was involved with it, and we're just going to continue on. But it says, but even if we are liberated from fatal heresies, they weave black sacks for you. In other words, it's like a spider shooting out a web. This is what I found to be extremely interesting. Divisions erupt when, because of a question posed by a German Jesuit. Pope Benedict was German. He was a Jesuit. The Pope is disturbed by the heresies of the demon, who slips into our customs under his rude black flag, hoping that there is some treasure to be salvaged. Now, I don't know if before Pope Benedict died, if he and Pope Francis had a conversation and Pope Benedict posed a question. Because you got to remember, there was some controversy when he was elected Pope about his role, what he played, or how he behaved during the Second World War and the Third Reich. And, I keep telling you, this whole feeling of being under authoritarian rule just doesn't go away for me. Okay. So, that's kind of in the back of my mind. So we don't know if there was a question posed, if he left some writings, if he said something to Pope Francis. And you got to remember, this is the first time in all of history that we've ever had two popes alive at the same time. And then Pope Benedict was the first pope in 600 years to resign from the post. But, a lot of people still considered him to be the Pope. So it says this question, the heresy, the question posed by the German Jesuit has a parallel with the past, which explains this card. That imagery. It says, I saw the sorrows caused by the serpents. Yesterday, I saw them give a squalid rosary of gold to a harsh and rigid master. He has his own men with him, even in the city of Rome. Now, we got to remember that everything Nostradamus talks about goes back to Rome. We got to remember the time frame in which he was writing these, the time frame in which he lived, that the popes were really like, the King of Kings, God's representative on earth, and they held more power. They had a lot of political influence and sway. They had a lot of money. So, in effect, we can put in the Pope for leaders of states. I feel that they could be interchangeable. So we're talking about Rome. We know that here in the States, Washington, D.C. is like our Rome. Okay, everything comes from there, right? But it says, because the pontiff prefers usefulness to patronage, this descendant will follow him well, and then he will cease to be a master. So going back when I said to you, that how some people were saying that they thought, Donald Trump was put on this earth by God. He was going to help change everything. His message of hate and division was really the true word that we should be going back to. We know that he was indeed an individual who preferred usefulness over patronage. Okay. If he was transactional, if you did something for him, he was going to ask you to do something. If he asked you to do something for him, then he expected you to pay him back in kind. The idea that it says this descendant will follow him well and he will cease to be a master. And remember I said to you that this could also, one of the third things is it speaks to me of somebody being who hasn't stepped forward yet. And I keep coming back to Ron DeSantis. I have no rhyme or reason why that is, but this to me, I said the three things. It is a timing, letting us know the time of Pope Francis, which is now. It is a representative, a situational issue that Trump supposedly helped and assisted McCarthy to get elected. But I also said that there is something else afoot. Gates and MTG getting orders or paving the way for this new person to step onto the stage. That's what's happening. And there was one other thing that I wanted to read to you. Let me see if I can find it in conjunction with one of the images, if you will bear with. And, like I said, somebody's going to be asking me about that. So I thought I would come back quickly and give you the because Nostradamus says that his prophecies will last until the year 3797, which if you break it down in the numerology, it is an 8, the number for the symbol of infinity. Oh, and another thing. I was talking to you about the Philosopher's Stone. Look up the image for the Philosopher's Stones. That triangle, it's hard to see, but it is a triangle. It is an inverted symbol of the Philosopher's Stone. So when I do these readings, I just don't base it on my intuition or whatever messages are coming to me from Spirit. I actually do the research. One other thing about this card. Okay. And it's reference to perhaps Pope Francis. It talks about of uncertainty born. We know that Pope Francis was raised by, he was poor, he was raised by a single mother, okay? It says that this is Nostradamus talking. It says, of uncertainty born, concealed dissensions, brawling fights, and the shouts of students of the Furies return. This is he speaking about himself, Nostradamus. Many were the sects to which I refused to ally myself, not born of the Latin people, and we know that Pope Francis is born of the Latin people. It says, this mission comes from their false arts of lifting up the brain. The light will not return if the office will not be permitted to those who are in agreement with us. But the priesthood intends to be stingy about admissions. If we wanted to, because the church doesn't play that large of a role anymore in our lives, we could look at those people who are sitting in the halls of government as being a kind of like a priesthood, like a brotherhood. It is an organization with a hierarchical structure, also based around white Anglo-Saxon Protestant religious beliefs, okay? If they teach false philosophies, it will be to stir up dissension in their wicked serpents. It is not by using insane concepts that the divine light will come to fill the chalice. If the church, and we're going to use the church as the idea of the body politic, okay, perceives and transcends its delusions, the madness of the Senate and the governments and ministries will also be cured. So so I take that back. He is talking about the religious organizations. Let me read that again. If the church perceives and transcends its own delusions, the madness of the Senate and of the government and ministries will also be cured, releasing them from their thankless roles. Or the church may be cast out with troubled cries. That internal exile is now even foreshadowed, pay attention, by the economy. Since in May, they schemed to make omissions from the final financial balance. I feel this refers to the debt ceiling, the big omnibus vote motion that's coming up. It mentions the month of May, and I'm saying to you, Kevin McCarthy won't be there by June or July. Okay? It says, the investigated sons appear to accuse the counselors of polluting their honest obligations. We already know that they are planning on the Republican Party now of having all of these investigations. They're going to be subpoenaing people. They're just going to be making their life hell. And they're going to be probably saying, that they're stealing the money or they're doing something else with the money, whatever. So it says that the investigated sons appear to accuse the counselors, those who are going to be running this, of polluting their honest obligations. Until they are joined together, there will be deep divisions. A bone-chilling cold comes over me. I expect an era in which exiled sons create trouble, confounding honest men, and they will cut short the symptoms of improvement. Now, the exiled sons could be those people who've been kicked out or who are not accepted into, the new party or the new faithful. I don't know if this is talking about, the new Freedom Caucus fever sweeping the entire Republican Party. We know for a time that's what it seemed like. We know now that there may be some slight divisions, but nevertheless, the message has always been the same, that of Trumpism, whatever that was that he was speaking out, that his philosophy, the belief that it was something perhaps divine and theological, that whole idea, what has now been let loose out of the bottle, it can't be put back in. And so I wanted to, it continues on to say, they will cut short the symptoms of improvement. In other words, it's going to be gridlock. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be chaos, confusion, and gridlock. But it says many groups dedicated to esoteric research will not be equal to their task. They will prefer to take sterile counterpositions in a damaging sectarianism. I can't even say the word. They will prefer to take sterile counter positions, and a damaged sectarianism that will thrust them back into the shadows. There will be divisions even within the church. The mad politics of money, placed above all other things, will cause the downfall of many. So I stand by what the cards say. I just wanted to come back and explain those two cards because I just heard somebody in my mind going, I don't understand what Pope Francis has to do with it. What is that? What do you mean by that? So I wanted to explain to you how that kind of all goes together, and the fact that I'm not just pulling this crap out of my, out of my butt. I researched these things, and just as I shut down the other reading and processed it, I was like, somebody's going to come back and ask me about that. So I wanted to explain to you those two cards because, as I said to you, to me, this is the key card in that whole spread. This is it. And I find it interesting in the way, I'm going to tell you something. This guy, this Ramadi dude, figured out this code that was encoded into using a computer program. And I've been reading this book, I don't know how many years. And I wasn't able to see the code, even though he'd given me the primer for it. And then the other night, as I was reading over it, the code, how to decode it, the primer that he gave me, I saw it work. It literally leaped off the page into mine. That's what I did in the military. I did encryption. And so now it's just this idea. So I said, I don't have time to sit down and go through all the quatrains using that. I don't even know how to design a computer program to do that by feeding that information in. I don't know exactly if it's a substitution code, okay, based upon a date, two dates, 1555 and 1556. And so I thought it was brilliant work, but I've been reading that book for years and I just didn't see it until the other day. So I do a lot of research before I try to bring these because I just don't want to be like talking all crazy out of the side of my neck. And so there you have it. Those are for me, the two key cards that's letting us know that there's somebody else waiting in the wings, that they're going to depose Kevin McCarthy. There's a whole nother plot afoot here. And there is a third person who has yet to step onto the stage. I think we've been given glimpses of him, but he has yet to, in a sense, take full power. And the whole idea that, he's a descendant, he's gonna be, a follower of this one guy, and then after that he won't need him anymore. And we have already seen that come into play. So that's what I have for you. I hope for any of you who were confused about the Pope Francis reference, now understand why that comes in and why that is so important. It's a timing issue. It tells us that we're right here, right now. It also mentions that guy who was a cruel and rigid master, who is a transactional individual who prefers usefulness over patronage, okay? But it also speaks that there's somebody else who's been following him who will no longer need him, and he will be stepping forth. So that's what I have for you. Until next time, be well, stay safe. Bye.